We should be up now, but I'm going to give it a little bit to let people hop on. And I'm going to hop on and share this once it becomes available.
Okay. Now streaming live.
So we'll get started here very shortly.
Cool.
All right, we have a couple people hopping on. Sean Campbell's here watching with us, it says.
Okay.
All right, so we're here live with Master Tom Marker. Master Marker is former director of Region 22. He's been a good friend for a long time now, so good to see you, Master Marker. Anything you'd like to say to the group before we officially get started?
Well, it's good to see you again. This has been nice. It's been almost 2 years now, so it's nice to see you online. And I've been following a lot of folks on Facebook and trying to keep tabs on what's going on in the region and the association. So yeah, it's kind of nice to jump back in here a little bit and say hi to everybody.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So we'll just kind of hop right into it. Same question I kind of ask everybody initially to get started. You can kind of tell us a little bit about your background, your story, how and why you got involved in martial arts, and then more specifically the World Tang Soo Do Association.
Sure. I started in college while I was Ohio State, go Bucks, and I started on, of all things, my 21st birthday. I took my first Tang Soo Do class. At Ohio State, there are a couple different karate clubs, taekwondo clubs, kung fu, all that fun stuff, and the reason I chose mine might sound like a really weird reason. It was Master Jenna was the first person to email me back when I reached out to all the clubs and said, "Hey, I'm interested in learning more about your style." And not only did he email me, but he called me, and then I think we chatted for like 2 hours or something about here's what I teach and here's where I come from and that sort of thing. And I was like, wow, that sounds interesting. And like I said, on my 21st birthday, I went to my first class down in a racquetball court in the what is now demolished Larkins Hall at Ohio State, and with Master Jenna, Miss Leslie Flom, and 3 other students who I think were all. Yeah, the club had just started a few months before, so the leader was an orange belt, so it was one of those kind of things, and I don't know if you've ever trained in a racquetball court, but a racquetball court is extremely loud. And if anybody knows either myself or Master Jenna, we both have a really loud key up. So it just would bang all over the walls. And, there was a kind of an observation hallway above. So people would walk by and kind of look down and like, what in the heck are those people doing? And that was probably our primary way of recruiting new members, was people just walking across, hearing all the screaming and trying to figure out what was going on. So that was kind of my start in martial arts, and I was pretty much hooked from that first day. I think on our 3rd class, my birthday's in January, so my 3rd class, it was snowing and ice and all that stuff outside, and Master Jenna said, "All right, everybody follow me." And I'm like, what's going on? Is this how I die? No, he took us out in the ice and the snow, and I just learned Sege Hyung Ilbu, so I guess he wanted to see how well I did it. So we went outside for what in my white belt mind seemed like 18 hours, but was probably only about 5 minutes. And we went through Sege Hyung Ilbu over and over and again out in the ice and the snow, and came back in and rubbed our feet warm again. And for whatever reason, I came back. And, I think a few weeks after that, I got to meet a lot of the folks, which were then in Region 8 at the Central PA clinic that Master White and Master K put on. And definitely from that event forward, I was hooked.
Awesome. Thank you. So you talked a little about Master White, Master K, and Master Jenna, Ms. Flom. So that's kind of Master Marker's lineage, and our lineage is kind of important to us. So is there any stories you'd like to share about any of your instructors, or maybe your instructors, your experience with them in your martial arts lineage and what that means to you maybe?
Oh, there's lots of stories I'd like to tell, but they're all going to result in phone calls after this. So I'm probably gonna hold off on those. But I just one of the things that I really value about the lineage that we came up in, through Buckeye Tang Soo Do and the ties back to both Appalachia and Penn State was, beyond the kick and the punch, the service elements to your community and to the association as a whole. That it was really interesting to see that how much work was being stood up by the folks in those schools, going to world championships and seeing the people who were working security at that time and selling the books and doing the souvenirs. It's like all of those folks were kind of, very much tied into that lineage one way or another through Master White. And, being stressed really early on that importance of, giving back and making the event, pleasurable for everybody else, for the families and for those students. One of the things that, was really impressed upon me early was like, one of the first times I was judging a tournament, and I was judging like a green belt ring, and green belt rings are always huge. And after watching the 37th kid at Region 8 do Pyongan Idan, I was like, oh my God, if I watch one more kid do Pyongan Idan, I'm gonna die. And somebody told us like, okay, this might be your 38th time watching somebody do Pyongan Idan, but this might be this kid's very first tournament. This might be the first time in front of judges, and you want to make sure that you give them, make that experience special for them, even if it's like the 100th time you've done this and that sort of thing. And so making sure you kind of have that spark that you're giving to the rest of the group.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So again, Master Marker mentioned he had come up through Ohio State University and under Master Jenna. For various reasons, Master Jenna and Miss Flom kind of moved on from Ohio State. And at that point, Master Marker became chief instructor at Ohio State University, Buckeye Tang Soo Do. So could you share a little bit about that experience, what that's like, and maybe some of the challenges and opportunities presented from teaching at a university rather than a different setting?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess one of the first things that was interesting was that I think you see that's really interesting in a college club is that for me, I was maybe only a year or two older than my students. And, I had the same relationship with Master Jenna. I think he's about a year and a half older than me. So, you have kind of like this age similarity. So you find yourself, being a little bit more involved socially with students, I think at the college level than you do maybe in a traditional studio where there's that relationship line gets a little bit blurred, I think, at the college level, which is both a good thing and can sometimes be a little bit of a bad thing or a crazy thing to kind of control. Certainly there are some interesting perks to teaching at a university. The students that you have they're usually in their late teens, early 20s. So physically, a lot of them are at their peak, or they're really strong. They're in really good shape. I'll leave off comments about mentally, but you have a lot of times you have the university's paying for your space, and you've got a student base to kind of recruit and attract, which is nice. Some of the downsides to working at a college is you're definitely at the whim of the university, and you have to kind of keep in compliance with some of their rules and regulations that they have, which is interesting. And I think one of the things that was shocking for a lot of people was, our school had officers. So we had a president, we had a treasurer. So when I would tell other instructors, I was like, oh yeah, this green belt over here, he handles all the money for the school. And they'd be like, what? And having students who are in charge of putting together your clinics and demos, and that was something that was really instilled in me through Master Jenna, was that this is a student-run organization, and it's opportunities for leadership, and giving the students the chance to kind of and it gives them a little bit of inside baseball too, as to like what it's like to run a studio, what it's like to interact on the regional level and the association level, that sort of thing too, which I think is kind of a nice eye-opening experience for the students who want to do that. And I think it definitely, when you do it that way, you definitely attract a certain type of student, and it really scares away the guys who are just like, I just want to fight. And yeah, they get really bored with that really quick. So.
Great. So later on, excuse me, I know you had turned kind of Ohio State and Buckeye Tang Soo Do over to who is now then Mr. but now Master Holtman. Master Holtman now runs Buckeye Tang Soo Do, and I don't know exactly all the time frames, so we'll talk about that a little bit, but I know later on you and Ms. Burke started Columbus Tang Soo Do. So we'll talk a little bit about how you started that school and kind of what that was all about as well.
Yeah. So I was we were in the middle of starting our club, Columbus Tang Soo Do, when Master Jenna moved out. So for a brief time, we were kind of juggling both schools, which was fun. So I became really acquainted with Ohio State because I would get there at 7:30 in the morning, work there till 5, take a nap somewhere in the rec center for half an hour and scarf down some food, and then train it till 10 o'clock and go back home and do the whole thing the next day. So we started Columbus Tang Soo Do at a rec center just down the street from Ohio State. And one of the things I think is really interesting about teaching is that everybody can probably go back to a moment where like they had this great plan for doing something and it failed miserably. And I think everybody has to experience the feeling of, I'm here, I'm opening classes, I'm going to teach anybody who wants to come, and nobody shows up. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe somebody will show up next week, and nobody shows up. So for the first, it was maybe right before we started teaching the classes there in maybe August or September. It's a little blurry now, but we didn't really get anybody to show up until right before Thanksgiving. And on that the class that Kelly and I were talking about, like maybe we just need to pack this up and find a different place to teach out of, or kind of spitball these ideas a little bit. A whole family of kids, literally a whole family of, I think she's still training now, Beth Kaiser and her sisters and brothers all came in uniforms, and we're like, we're ready to teach, we're ready to do karate. We're like, well, okay, I guess we're teaching a karate class now. And we ended up moving that class out to a city called Pataskala, which if you're not from Columbus, you have no idea where Pataskala is. And even if you're in Columbus, you may not know where that is. Sorry to any Pataskala folks who are watching. But that was the YMCA that was near our new house. And we picked up classes there, and very quickly we ended up pulling in the Najelski family and the Gremling families, who are still training right now. And they were our first real families who also went on to become our first black belts. So it was an interesting experience. I would definitely say to anybody who's aspiring to be a future studio owner one day, or that sort of thing, or wonder what it's like, that there's definitely always going to be that concept that you have to be ready to kind of hit the ground and kind of fail every once in a while and pick yourself back up and be able to, not let it get to you that much, and be able to kind of stick to your goal of wanting to teach and have students, that sort of thing. So
definitely,
it's a good lesson to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not willing to get past that, you're not going to survive in the long term. So appreciate that insight. I'm going to try something I haven't done on Zoom before. I'm going to do a screen share here briefly, just because some different studios I've noticed have some different logos, and Columbus Tang Soo Do had one of the more unique logos. So I'm going to just pop that up for a minute here, not even a full minute, but so we'll see how this goes. I tested this earlier.
There it is.
All right, so this is the Columbus Tang Soo Do Academy logo. Give everybody a brief chance to kind of look at that. I'll pop master marker back up, but I just wanted to put it up there it's a little bit unique in terms of what it means, and there's a student interactivity level involved with that too that I've never seen in a logo before. So I'm going to go back to master marker, but if you could kind of explain kind of where the Columbus Tang Soo Do logo came from a little bit, and I might screen share another thing depending on kind of where you want to go with that and what you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I could honestly probably talk for the whole hour about the logo because there's a lot going on there. You know, really early on when I was kind of putting it together, one of the first things that I was the initial inspiration was kind of, you see the black in the middle pointing in all of the 8 major directions. You know, that was kind of my major inspiration, is where I started kind of having like the idea of the compass and the 8 directions that you see in the Bagua, that sort of thing. You know, I was also kind of inspired by some of like the 14th and 15th century fencing manuals that show like really elaborate footwork on the floor. If you've ever looked at any of Ed Parker's Kempo stuff, he has some interesting diagrams that kind of work along the same lines. And, you know, kind of it represents a lot of different things. You have the 8 circles, which I've also kind of later on tied in with the rank colors to represent like the different ranks and phases throughout your training. And you have this sort of interconnectedness with all of the circles to kind of represent that Sunbei Hubei relationship, where, you know, each rank is kind of touching the rank before it to kind of establish that relationship. And you see that as you kind of go around the circle, that the white belt one still touches the master rank at the top. And for me, that was important because I wanted to show that, you can't be a master without students. You have to have that connection, and without, and it kind of becomes sort of like all the spokes on a wheel analogy, that if the spoke breaks, then your wheel falls apart. So they're all really, they all depend on each other. It represents some of the circular and linear aspects of our art. One of the things that I found that was really interesting, if you want to share the other graphic, I can talk about it really quickly.
Get that up here in a second.
The 8 directions was something that I was kind of turned on to through Master Jenna sharing his knowledge of Mountain Wind and Appalachia. And this was not an intentional tribute. I actually found this several years after I got approval for my logo. I found this on a document, and it kind of blew me away. Some of the it's kind of like a flipped negative space version of it, but there's a lot of similarities in there, which that kind of made me feel good. It wasn't something I was trying to do, but it was just like, oh, what a nice little surprise that we've got here. And I think it's funny because a lot of what's happening in my training has been kind of nice little surprises along the way that just have all tied themselves together. The interactivity part that you mentioned was kind of a tradition going back to Buckeye. And if any of you guys have seen the Buckeye Tang Soo Do logo, you've got the circles and the triangle, and in the middle there's the Yang. And the tradition was at Buckeye, after you passed your orange belt test, you got to paint in the Yang on the back of your uniform. So I took that and just turned the knob to 11 and said, okay, at every rank you get to paint in your rank all the way up. And so that was kind of just like a fun little feature that everybody really enjoyed getting to do, was, painting their orange belt line in, painting in their green belt, and getting to move up. And it was a big deal to get to paint in the black belt, and that sort of thing was always kind of fun. And for the longest time before I tested for master, that field was empty. The master field was empty on my uniform, and that was kind of like this reminder to me that I still had a long way to go, and that there's still a goal in front of me. And then once I attained that, it kind of touches back to the concepts of white belt learning that I know that Grandmaster Bodwin was especially fond of talking about at Master's Clinic, was that we're back to being white belts when we're at the Master's Clinic, and having that connection back to the beginning rank again there. that wasn't something that I thought of when I first developed the logo, but as time went on and my experience grew, it was kind of, again, just kind of a nice little fun coincidence, happy accident, like Master No likes to say.
Yeah, I always thought that was very cool. Just
a real pain in the butt to set up in Photoshop or Illustrator, I can tell you that. Because if any of those circles is off by even a pixel, it throws off all the little dependent designs that are within it. So yeah, it's fun.
I'm going to segue to another question we talked about earlier
Sure.
with weapons, just because I don't have a picture to share, but I noticed one of Master Marker's profile picture is actually him twirling a fire staff, and
That's right.
the trail of the fire kind of follows that logo circle almost exactly, which is very cool. So I know you've always been interested in staff as a weapon. So can you kind of talk a little bit about what got you interested in that and what that means to you?
Yeah, sure. I think the weapons training was always fun and appealing to me. Starting out very early on, going through the ranks. I think for just like a lot of people, and there's definitely, it's interesting because when you're first learning, you're getting exposed to so many different things that, you've got your staff, which is like, it's your gateway weapon, right? You start doing staff, and then somebody shows you a pair of nunchucks, and you start getting into hard stuff like 9-section chain whips, and it all kind of goes downhill from there. But what really attracted me to staff, and again, kind of through our lineage, through that kind of Buckeye to Appalachia connection, having that connection back to the mountain wind form, and the staff was definitely one of those things that was like a key part of training with Master Jenna. I believe, I know, it was his fourth Dan master's topic as well as mine. And that was just an important piece of knowledge to me. For me, it was like in Kung Fu they call the staff the great teacher. And in the beginning it's the teacher because if you screw it up, it hits you and it hurts. And the basic lesson is, hey, don't do that, dummy. But it starts to teach you a lot about those kind of lanes of motion and possibilities that you can, the way that you move the staff around you, the way that you move around the staff. And then, that starts teaching lessons about how you move without the staff and how you move in interacting with a partner. And and for me personally, it was it's kind of a dream come true. I got to teach staff at the master's clinic one year, and that was a real honor. And it's kind of nice to see, there were a lot of people who came to my class who I greatly respected, and it mildly terrified me to have all these people in my class and watching. And one of my fond memories of that was actually I had Master K on the sideline. He didn't participate in the class, but he watched, and he took some notes and talked to me afterwards. And he was really complimentary of the work that I'd put together for that section, and that really meant a lot to me. And recently with everything that has happened with Master K passing and that sort of thing, it's kind of weighed heavily on my mind the last few weeks. So it's nice to have that happy memory.
Definitely. A lot of us have similar memories of Master K, and it's been tough for us, particularly in Region 22, but across the association. So thank you again for sharing that as well. So you mentioned briefly Kung Fu. I know you have experience in a number of other martial arts, but you've always kind of shared in our region in different clinics your experience in the Chinese martial arts. So you feel free to talk about any of your other martial arts experiences, but I'm kind of interested in seeing how that came about and what your experiences in those martial arts are, and maybe how it relates back to Tang Soo Do, if you can.
Yeah. And honestly, the reason I really got involved in some of the other stuff that I've trained in is really how it tied into Tang Soo Do. And then, like I was exposed to Tai Chi through one of the Central PA clinics at first. Like Master White actually brought in somebody from outside, maybe from Penn State or something like that, who did Aikido and Tai Chi, that sort of thing. I started doing Tai Chi sh- ... 'around red belt actually, and have kind of gone in and out of it over the last 20 years. Getting opportunities to work with Master Mansulich and kind of renew some of the stuff that I'd learned was nice, and it kind of inspired me to get back into it. It's actually, I found a really excellent Tai Chi instructor in town that I've been having a chance to kind of get together with. Nowadays, we're doing it on Zoom, which we were talking about a little bit beforehand. Is, it's an experience from the teaching side, but it's definitely it's an experience from the student side as well. I'll say that. And one of the things I really attracted me to Tai Chi and Kung Fu was like learning a little bit about the history of Tang Soo Do forms, and reading some of the history of Tang Soo Do by Huang Qi, where he said that a lot of what he was, when he went to China to train during the occupation, learning about long fist Kung Fu and Tai Chi, and seeing some of the Tan Tui, which was a form of long fist exercises that if you look at what his Sons Association is doing now with a lot of their new forms, you see a lot of that really explicitly done in the forms now. But it really made me kind of wonder, excuse me, how those influences shaped what he was being taught, what was being offered in Korea at the time. And so I kind of wanted to delve into it a little bit. And when I was at Ohio State, one of the really interesting things is like there was something like 23 different martial arts being taught at Ohio State, and the group that we had the best relationship with was a group called Swai Jiao. Swai Jiao is a kung fu group that it's kind of it's a stand-up wrestling sort of style of kung fu, and the instructor in there, he was really good. We would do a lot of kind of commingling classes. He would teach our class how to do proper break falls, and Master Jenna would teach staff and how to teach them how to do flying spinning back kicks in exchange, that sort of thing. And over the years, the relationship with Sifu Grigsby was something that I got to cultivate a little bit. I know Master Holtman has too over the years, and we would have him come and teach that Tan Tui style to our group, just to give them a little bit of appreciation for some of the things that inspired Tang Soo Do. So I still do that periodically. I'd have to really dust off anything past like the 4th or 5th form, but I still do the Tai Chi pretty actively, doing the Yang style Tai Chi. And when you're doing it, you can't help but see the similarities. Obviously there are some differences, and what's really interesting me right now is like the things that are different, why are they different? And the things that are the same, why are they like I think it's always good to embrace like the similarities, but sometimes things are different for a reason, and trying to figure out what makes it different is a good thing to know. So
all right, appreciate that. Just build upon that a little bit. Personal perspective, a lot of people nowadays are kind of looking at Tang Soo Do and a connection to the Okinawan side of martial arts, and a lot of that in our earlier system. But like you said, as you move later on, there's a lot of things you can't escape the connected to the Chinese martial arts as well. So it's kind of an interesting balance between the two, especially when you get into the Chosung and Yokro forms that are other associations are doing, like you said. So definitely interesting. Something that I think people should study at some point is at least expose yourself to what principles of the other martial arts are. So
yeah,
thank you for sharing that. Go ahead.
And that was one of the things that was, in the 14 attitude requirements, learning thoroughly the theory and philosophy behind what you're doing. And that was, for me, that was something that I always took really seriously, and I still do. Like the amount of, you taught me Shaisan, and from there, I've probably watched about 25 different variations of Shaisan and different associations and different styles of karate, just to kind of see like, okay, where did this form come from? What changed along the way? It's really interesting to see like, okay, why does this school step forward with the right foot instead of the left foot? And why do they do 2 hands instead of 1? And that's the sort of stuff that I think that when you really have the chance to really dig into a form, those are the lessons that can just kind of keep you going for years and years in a form, long after you've memorize the sequences or decide to be one of those crazy people who learns how to do the form backwards, or, I still remember at my master's test, they asked all the 6-dans to step up, the 6-dan candidates to step up and say, all right, I want you guys to do Pyongan Odon. And they're all like, yeah, okay. But I want you to do it mirror image. And you watch people kind of go. And it's definitely it's a mental challenge. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of training was, the forms and all the lessons that they have inside them that you could spend. I think there's a reason that some styles of karate only teach 2 or 3 forms, because you could argue that there's more than enough in those 3 forms to keep you busy for a lifetime. So, and that's kind of what my personal training is now, is basically Basai, Shaisan, and Mountain Wind. So
let me ask you about something else that we didn't talk about ahead of time, because it kind of popped in my head from what you were just talking about.
Sure.
I know it kind of comes from something that Master Jenna did, but I saw you one time demonstrate, I think it was Kong San Kun, completely forward and then completely backwards. Kind of talk about where that came from and how you tackled something like that.
That was definitely kind of a go big or go home kind of moment, I guess. That I think I could have just done Sege Hyung Ilbu and people would be like, oh, cool. But I said, no, let's do this crazy form. That was something that, that was definitely a fundamental of the training that Master Jenna instilled in all of us, was that you don't know a form until you know it inside and out, forward and backwards, left and right, up and down. And, exploring some of all those little possibilities and permutations was really valuable in my early training and kept me going for a long time. It still presents challenges to this day. Like the other day, I was trying to figure out how to do like the in Shaisan, doing the stepping side kick, hammer fist punch, how to do that whole thing backwards. I was like, yeah, okay, not this week. But it really, what I really thought was interesting about that, and especially going through Kong San Kun, and I'd get to class about an hour early and just start at the last move and like, okay, how do I get from this move to the one before it? And really helps you see some of the, if you have any sort of issues with posture or movement or getting your body behind a technique, when you do it backwards, I do think that you really start paying a lot more attention to some of those aspects. And I think it can help straighten out your forwards version too a little bit. For giggles, I did just try to do Kong San Kun backwards the other day, and I muddled through the middle part of it because of the whole, even going forwards, I think a lot of people get lost on the side kick to elbow and the chops, and kind of forgetting where you are somewhere in the middle of that is still challenging. What I will say that I was never able to replicate that Master Jenna also did was he did at a demonstration, he did it forwards and then he did it backwards. And then he did, let's see there, 52 moves in Basai. So he did move 1, move 52, move 2, move 49. And he did it all the way through until he did move 52 and move 1. And there's this little middle section where you're doing both crescent kicks and chops, and it's just it's tough to watch, but it's really a powerful mental training exercise, I think.
Great, thank you for sharing that, because that's something that, again, definitely I think valuable to people out there to look at. Just because you've done a form one way one time doesn't mean you know it.
I once had a white belt student, and I know Miss Burke is downstairs watching, and she'll probably instantly remember this. That a student was like, all right, we need to work on 1-steps, and this kid comes up to me and goes, I've mastered 1 through 5. I'm like, pump the brakes on. Let me show you what you don't know. And that mindset, and part of, I think certainly a part of the reason that we would do the backwards forms was a little bit of a humility test. Like, yeah, you're not as good as you think you are, because here's something I'll bet you can't do. And then you get to that point, and they're like, well, okay, now let me show you what else. There's always another ceiling to climb to. Yeah. Yeah,
you can. Back in my more hardcore days, you can ask about the group of 6 people testing for Chodanbo that I failed because they couldn't do Seigyang or move backwards. They all made it to black belt eventually, so I don't feel that bad about it.
Good.
All right, you've talked going back a little bit about the service that was instilled in you. You're one of the few people that served as director of Region 22. So Master Marker was one of our Region 22 directors. You talk a little bit about that experience at any level you would like. I know there's a lot
Sure.
to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot going on at that level. One of the things that, it's not going to shock you, I know, but for people who are watching who are wondering what are the perks that come along with being regional director, I just want to remind everybody it's not a paid position in any way, shape, or form. So, the people who are leading the region are doing so very much out of a love for the region and for the association. And there are a lot of difficult decisions that come along with that. There are decisions that that you may not particularly care for the end result. You may have a lot of instructors who are upset with the directions that you want to take, or they have their own vision of what they want to do. And I think the hardest thing is just you're always trying to do what's best for the students, what's best for what's best for that GUP student who may not get a chance to do a lot of stuff at the regional level. What kind of opportunities can you present to them to, like I kind of like back to what I was talking about earlier for judging a form, like how to, after going to Don camps for 10, 15, 20 years, how do you make sure that next group who's coming into Don camp, they still get to have that special I remember my first Don camp experience, and making sure that that's still a really good thing for them. Finding ways to try to help the association grow, both through some innovations that you might want to try to do at the regional level or the studio level that you can then say, hey, this worked in our tiny little region, maybe it will work for you guys, let us know what you think. I think a lot of growth in our association kind of happens that way on that small level, and you try to apply it at different scales, or but getting back to like just being regional director, I think it really does, it's an interesting position because like I said, you're kind of you end up being a middle manager, and you're really invested in talking to the other instructors of the region, making sure that they are doing well and making sure that their students are happy. And that's a real challenge, which I'll be honest, I don't think I was necessarily up for at the time. It's in some level it's a full-time job, and if you have a full-time job, then that can be really tough. But I think the biggest thing is making sure that you're at all times that you're acting in the interest of all the students, and that you really do have a passion for making the association grow and making the region grow.
Fun. Thank you. I'm just going to say to people who are watching on Facebook, and there is a group out there, there's at least one question out there that I'm going to get to a little bit later, but if you guys have questions and comments for Master Marker,
ask away.
Throw them up there, ask away. I know a lot of people watching on these groups are just kind of like, oh, I'm just going to watch and lurk here, but this is one of the reasons we're doing it, is for people watching to have questions as well. I'm not by any means done with Master Marker yet, but if you guys have questions, please put them out there. We're watching your comments. All right. Continuing on. Again, you'd served as regional director, also helped out with our black belt camps a lot over the years. We had a lot going on. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
so
sure.
In more recent years, Master Markers actually stepped back from being a studio owner, and I had talked to him about this ahead of time to see if it's something he wanted to talk about, but we just felt like there might be somebody out there in a similar situation that kind of needs to hear this story due to other obligations that Master Markers had. So I'll let him discuss that, but it's just something I wanted to ask about as well, kind of what the challenges were in making that decision and where you are now, maybe.
Sure. I mean, I think the hardest thing for both myself and Ms. Burke to kind of come to terms with was that this group has been something that has basically defined our entire adult life. Like I said, I started on my 21st birthday, and I've pretty much from that moment was just like ramped up and accelerated and just trying to do whatever I could in Tang Soo Do, both at a starting at a studio level and then a regional level and an association level, that there's a lot, and I really loved and enjoyed doing all of it. But what it really started to come down to was, and I'll be perfectly frank, was I had a full-time job that was making me work 50 to 60 hours a week, and then running a school, and then trying to do regional stuff, and I really felt, at least for myself, and you guys would be all far too polite to agree with me, but I really felt that I wasn't giving that position my all, either especially as a regional director, but also, I started to feel it at the studio level, because, and I think every instructor can probably point to a moment where they're like, you know what, this is not fun. And I wasn't the job that I was in, I was a manager, and then I was going to karate class and managing what at the time were problems. And I was like, so I spend all day dealing with problems, and then for my hobby, I'm also dealing with problems. And really the thing that really accelerated it was, we have a 7-year-old daughter now, and there were days where maybe I was like, well, I got to see her for 30 minutes today. That was nice. And one of the things that and that was really the biggest thing that I think that inspired us. We moved away from the area where we were teaching as well. So we're like about 35 to 40 minutes from our studio now, which in Ohio is a big deal. For you PA guys, that's sitting on your head. You can do that. But so having the opportunity to kind of be more actively involved in our family and helping our daughter grow and mature, we've taken on a lot of responsibility. She joined Cub Scouts, so we've been doing a lot with the Scouts, and I've gotten a chance to be assistant Cub Master now and all that fun stuff. And Kelly's working with the committees as well. So we have some fun stuff that we're getting to do, but it's tough because we miss a lot of the folks who are kind of our family, and I don't think it's hyperbole to say that if it wasn't for Buckeye Tang Soo Do, I'd have never met Kelly. I'd have never been where I am right now. So the impact that the group has had on our lives, that was one of the things that was really tough. And as hard as it is to say, we also had to we knew in the back of our heads that there was a chance that there were people that we want to come when we come back and we're in a more active sort of role. There might be a lot of people who just aren't still around. And in the last year, we've seen, unfortunately, a lot of people who've kind of been taken before their time, and so that causes some pain to kind of reflect on as well. But one of the things I think, and not to get too depressed about it, but I also feel like it's still a family. I've reached out, and I've emailed you and Ricky a few times, and I've reached out to Master Home Shack, just to kind of check in, see how you guys are doing, let you guys know that we're still thinking of you. And while the wheels keep turning and the sun keeps coming up, you guys still keep having dawn camps without me somehow. I don't know how you manage it.
I don't know either, actually.
I'm sure you figured it out. And it's that part. Sometimes you think about, oh wow, all these things are still going on, and I miss being a part of it. But it really came down to kind of making that decision for what's best for our family and what's best for us. And just trying to keep the gifts that we've been given through training in Tang Soo Do, beyond the kicking and the punching is stuff that we can still keep in our daily lives, and things that we can continue to practice on our own. And it's just right now it's a smaller circle that I'm in right now. And I'm hoping to one day get back and be able to kind of share some of the crazy theories that I've been cooking up in my basement dojang and that sort of thing. And hopefully not too far off the reservation one day, should I ever come back. Share crazy stuff.
Yeah, definitely when we can all get together again, we'll find some time. I think a lot of us have been doing the basement dojo thing in this era we're in right now. So
yeah, but like I've been talking to a lot of masters, like, how do you find time to train, and what do you do? And one of the answers one person gave me was like, I'm training right now. And you're just like, oh, okay. And when you think about it from that sort of a perspective, that your training extends beyond the dojang, and it extends beyond taking part in association and regional events, and how you keep that in your life, and how you embrace that, I think is really important to being a lifelong martial artist, whether you're putting on the pajamas every day or not.
I definitely appreciate that. Just again, I feel like especially in this era, I know people are struggling with keeping dojos open for various reasons.
Yeah.
So take care of yourself first. It's kind of the message there, and your family. Just because you're not a studio owner doesn't make you not a martial artist and not a master. So
Yeah, and like there's a lot of history about folks, talking about kind of early on that progress is not like a linear growth up or anything like that. That you're going to have dips and valleys along the way, and I know a book that a lot of us have read and treasured is All Men Are Brothers. And there, one of the sayings that comes up in that book a lot is like tasting bitterness, and what that means as a concept of beyond food, to kind of embrace a little bit of the hard times, and knowing that you will come out on the other side better or stronger for that. I think is really important. And I the decision to voluntarily close a school is obviously very vastly different than being forced to close a school for fiscal reasons, or for the current situation that we're in. And I can't imagine how difficult that is for somebody who has just poured their heart and soul into something. But even if it's, I hope it's a little bit comforting to think that there's still a life beyond, and there's always the opportunity to rebuild and regrow from loss. So yeah.
thank you for sharing that again. Appreciate it. A couple things there out there on Facebook. One, Master Russo reminded me that I forgot that today was actually supposed to be the start of the Region 22 Don Comp. So, interesting timing there. Master Martin and Ms. Burke used to run our Don Comps amazingly well. There are a couple different questions from Yoshiota and Stephanie Cribbs, kind of talking about your experience with photography in the association. They love seeing a lot of your photographs over the years. So you can talk a little bit about your interest in photography, maybe some favorite shots you've had, and Stephanie also asked, we'll be seeing more of your pictures in the future.
Yeah, so photography it started as a way to not do security. If I was going to be on my feet at Worlds the whole time, I'd rather be doing something I like than being mean to people. No, actually, my first job at Worlds was being security and Master White, as a green belt, said, "Here, go stand in front of this door. Don't let anybody in who doesn't have a ticket." And I asked somebody if they had their ticket, and they pull out their master's belt with the stripe. "This is my ticket," and like walked right past me. And I'm like, cool, I don't want to do this anymore. So I started working with Ms. Flom, who at the time was doing, her and Amanda Hagee were doing photography at World Championships. And I started helping her out with regional clinics. She gave me her spare camera, and I would just take pictures, back in the film days at the very beginning of like, well, who knows what we're going to get? We'll see in a week. And then moving into the digital realm was certainly a lot more fun, because you could really do, like, from a documentary perspective, really cover the whole weekend. And the last World Championships that we shot, it was myself and Ms. Burke, Ms. Najelski, and Ms. Hughes. And it's really cool to be able to take pictures from 4 different angles of the entire weekend, until you've collected everybody's memory card and you realize that you have 23,000 images to cut through after the end of that. But I think one of the things that was really fun about that was that you really got to help maybe capture a memory for somebody, or bring it home to somebody who wasn't able to be there. Certainly doing photography gave me, access to masters and the grandmasters that people normally wouldn't have, like just by virtue of being able to walk around on the floor at world championships and go wherever I wanted and put my nose up at you security folks. I have a badge I can go through. It was really interesting, and I got to meet a lot of really talented competitors along the way. It was always fun to photograph like the people who were competing for grand champion, but there was an equal amount of fun and like I said, getting to try to document that person's first tournament, making sure that hopefully mom and dad get a picture of their kid doing a tiny tiger ring. And there's something to be said about taking your picture from up in the stands, but being able to get down on the floor and be 2 feet away from the ring and get them just as they're doing that first kick and Sega Hyungyobu or something. That always felt really good. And I think my favorite picture, obviously, that I ever got to take was just kind of an off moment. I think maybe at our first Region 22 championship, if not the first or the second, that we had Grandmaster Shin at. And I think one of the things that we all remember about Grandmaster Shin was just his infectious laugh. And I actually keep a YouTube video of an interview with him that has him laughing in it, and I just play it every once in a while because it reminds me of him. But I caught him in the middle of one of his kind of trademark laughs and a funny story that he was telling at the end of the tournament while everybody's in the background furiously trying to calculate grand champion and he's killing time. But this picture of him just being so happy and just happened to get the World Tang Soo Do flag lined up behind him. That was a picture that they ended up using on his memorial marker down in I'm not there, but at World Headquarters. And when I got to see that for the first time, that was really touching to me. I knew that they had asked me to provide any photos that I had of him over the years, but that was a real surprise to see that on the memorial. And it was a very emotional moment at that time. So I still get to do photography. I get a chance to do senior photos every once in a while for former students and that sort of thing. I haven't done it as much over the last year or two as I'd like, but it's still fun. My daughter's probably one of the most photographed kids on the planet, and certainly that would be something I would always love to continue to keep doing. So,
oh, definitely. Want to see more Master Markers photos? Hit them up because I've always enjoyed them. Like I said, I can't share it right now, but one of my favorite photos is just that image with the flame staff making concentric circles. So very cool. I know you didn't take that picture necessarily because you're the guy doing it, but
yeah,
still
there was a lot of setup. I think that was a tripod and a long exposure kind of thing, and it was kind of noticed as I was doing like the spin in the front, take it around behind your back and over your head and back around kind of thing, and it just kind of happened to work out into the very similar to the logo, and I've always kind of enjoyed that. And it was nice because it tied in a lot of my favorite things of staff and photography and and all the school stuff that we were doing. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love when things intersect like that. So I still have a few other questions. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm trying to segue into some things that you were talking about. So speaking of photography and how that generates memories, and you were speaking of being closer to some of the grandmasters than maybe other people. Did you have any favorite memory beyond what you've already discussed of Grandmaster Shin or Grandmaster Bowman or any of the senior masters?
I can't think of anything necessarily specific, but one of the things that I was always impressed by, and I've had some chances to work with and talk to martial artists outside of our organization, and not to say that we have the monopoly on awesomeness, although I think we have a pretty good amount of it. I've definitely walked around and seen people who wear the candy cane belt and walk around, and they're very puffed up and inaccessible, and I'm a ninth dan, you're not even allowed to look at my shadow, that kind of thing. And Grandmaster Shin was never like that, and he was so, if you got a chance to be with him behind the scenes, he was very warm and open and approachable. And he obviously had a balancing act of trying to talk to everybody who wanted to talk to him, and in a lot of ways make that interaction special, even though he's sometimes probably having the same conversation in every single region that he would visit and every single instructor that he talked to sometimes. But he had just like this nice, if he was just joking around or being casual and welcoming, those were some of the things that always impressed me. Master K is another great example. When I first met him, he was like, "Hi, I'm Mike. Nice to meet you." And I would never, ever just been like, "Hey, Mike, how are you?" But that first event that I went to, he welcomed us all into his house. We had the usual clinic after party, and he's like, "Hey, come downstairs. Let me show you the armory." And I was like, "What?" And then you go down here, holy crap, this is an actual armory. This is amazing. But he was the things that always impressed me is, and for whatever reason always surprised me, was just how very open and willing everybody is to just share their knowledge and their passion for this art. For my master's essay, I was calling people that I knew, but to Master Godwin, for example, I'm a complete stranger. But I emailed him and said, "Hey, I'm doing my master's thesis on staff, and I'm studying some of the staff forms that we've done throughout the association, like the unofficial 4th, 5th, and 6th bong forms, those kind of things. If you'd sit down with me and talk to me, I'd really appreciate it." And he cleared off an hour of his schedule, and we talked on the phone, and he shared all kinds of knowledge about those forms. And Master Durkle and a lot of other folks were just really happy to share a lot of that historical knowledge, and what inspired them, and what lit their passion about the martial arts, and in this case specifically staff. And that was one of the things that was always really impressed upon me. And I think that a lot of people, if they're not actively taking advantage of it, really need to make sure that they're doing, because again, as the last couple of years have shown us, that a lot of these folks have been kind of taken away way before they should have been, and still had a lot of knowledge to share. And I think it's really easy, and kind of any martial arts organization has kind of a top down, has a hierarchy to it, and there are certainly moments where people are, for lack of a better word, scared to talk to a senior master, because they're afraid of, like, I'm being lighthearted here, but I don't want him to kill me if I say the wrong thing or something like that. And certainly there's a protocol, and there's a time and place for talking to somebody, but if you follow those guidelines and you're respectful of their time and their knowledge, that there are so many people out there who are just craving to share that knowledge, and they're just waiting for the right person to ask them. That you do a nunchuck seminar with like Master DeMarco or something like that, and you learn a lot in that session, but if you go up to him afterwards and talk to him a little bit about it, you might find yourself in like a 45-minute conversation learning more and more. And once again, going back to Master K, he used to like to plant seeds in people, and hey, if you're interested in this, you should really talk to this person, or you should really check out this book, or this video, those kind of things. And those are the opportunities for growth that I think, if you really want to advance your understanding and knowledge, that you have to be willing to kind of take those steps, to be willing to go out there and kind of, while it might be a little scary a little bit, be like, "Hey, Master Jorgensen, I heard you're pretty good at sparring. What can that might invite a very different conversation than you might be willing to take on at first, but you're going to learn a lot through it either way, I guarantee." So
definitely, yeah, that's a great insight, something that I hadn't really processed, but I know coming up through the ranks, there were a lot of masters that put themselves out there as approachable, but there were other masters that seemed like they were really scary, and I was terrified of approaching. I used to be scared as heck of approaching people like Master Beam, and even Master Robinson, who later on I learned is one of the nicest and most approachable people on the planet when talking with you. But just and I've heard people say the same thing about me, to be honest. So don't be scared and terrified to approach the masters and ask a question. Yes, there's an appropriate time for that, but yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
you definitely have the I think your default expression I think is a little scary for some people sometimes, but I always joke that like, oh, him, Master Marath, they're just big teddy bears. You just go give them a big hug. And my students looking at me, what you talking about? They're like, no, really, they're really nice people. Go talk to them, go listen to them. So
Thank you. I only have a couple more questions for Master Marker. We're hitting that hour mark. Again, if anybody else out there who's watching wants to ask him anything or throw any comments out there, again, I encourage Master Marker. I'm not going to throw out every single comment that you guys made, but I'll encourage Master Marker to go back and look and check and respond to any of your comments. A lot of people just saying hi and glad to see you. So if you have any questions, though, put them out there. Basically, about 2 to 3 more questions from Master Marker. You can choose to answer this one or not, because I'm not sure if it was answered with the photography portion, but do you have any other hobbies or interests kind of outside of martial arts? Maybe something somebody doesn't know about you that you'd like to share with the group or talk about?
sure. So I guess as a midlife crisis or a way to fill the void left by Tang Soo Do, I've spent a lot of time doing disc golf, which I is I don't, you know, a lot of people might, if you know disc golfers or you've ever done this, I don't look like I fit the disc golf stereotype, but it is a lot of fun and I've enjoyed getting out and doing that. It's interesting how much a lot of the dynamics of throwing a disc and that sort of thing very quickly come back to Tang Soo Do principles of weight shifting and, you know, all using your hips, all that good, you know, it's all coming back into there. Really enjoyed working in a very brief and limited capacity so far, but like I mentioned, our daughter joined Cub Scouts, and Scouting is definitely an organization that has a lot of parallels with World Tang Soo Do in terms of service. If you look at the Scout Law versus the Seven Tenets and that sort of thing, you start to see a lot of carryover and crossover. So, you know, it's cool that our daughter gets to be a part of that, and it's kind of funny because we helped put on the Pinewood Derby for our pack this year, and I think our Cub Master was a little nervous, like, now we're gonna have like 50 kids at this event. Does that seem, that's not overwhelming? I'm like, if you knew, like a group of tiger cubs running around, we just kind of look at that and go, oh, that's cute. Okay, have fun. So that's been a lot of our time, you know, with the COVID situation. Lots of family walks. We've done lots of walking and biking, which has been nice. Getting a chance to watch our daughter learn to ride a bike for the first time, and going on bike rides with her is just, it's really exhilarating and fun. So yeah, mostly just family and disc golf.
If you are friends with Master Marker on Facebook, I'll just say that was a fun one for me, because I haven't seen Carol in a while. Kind of just seeing her take off without the training wheels on the bike was pretty cool. So,
yeah, it was cool. The whole like this group of cyclists came by and like, you can do it, yeah. That's awesome.
Definitely. So one of my final questions is one that masters have kind of tried to tread lightly around, but I feel a need to ask kind of everybody is how you think martial arts in general, and maybe even the World Tang Soo Do Association, have changed over the years since you started, either for the better or maybe for the worse in some ways. I think it's important for us as people who have been around a while to share kind of both perspectives, but I'll leave that one up to you.
Hey, what are they going to tell me? I can't come to an event? No. So I guess there's a lot of good that happens in the association, or else I wouldn't have put blood, sweat, and tears into it for years and years. Some of the stuff that I really, really have enjoyed seeing, you know, and this is really more from an instructor, studio owner perspective, is the clinics and training opportunities that we continue to put together, at least on a regional level. I saw that at the last World Championships, there were some actual clinics that were going on, and that's something that, is always fun to me. I competed in tournaments. I had fun. If you ask anybody in Region 5, they'd probably tell you the reason I stopped doing tournaments because I got tired of getting my butt kicked by Master Osiah Robinson, and that's true. I was so happy to age out of the 17 to 34 division, and then go pound on a couple of 50-year-old guys for a while. But I think one of the things that I guess the way that I'll say it is that there are a lot of, for lack of a better word, buckets in Tang Soo Do that you can focus on. And in Grandmaster Shin's books, he talks about like the different components of Tang Soo Do, from forms and meditation and breaking, and you have all these aspects of an art, and it's very easy to kind of concentrate on one or two of your buckets and really kind of neglect the others. And from my bias, like I said, I'm not a huge tournament guy. I like doing photography at tournaments because I love taking pictures of people who can do things that I can't do. But I also know that it doesn't hold a lot of appeal for a lot of people. And I see a lot of effort being pushed towards the tournament aspect. And I think that training for a tournament can really develop a lot of great attributes. And the stories of Master Fisher back when he was a back to back world champion, practicing Chun Di for hours in the mirror just to have that dedication to perfection. That is something that I think is definitely admirable and valuable. But I would definitely advise people just not to neglect all of the other possibilities. Like, I'm never going to be the guy that breaks 14 bricks or anything like that, but I should still study breaking. I should still look into Hyung applications. I should still look into making sure that my self-defense training is actually self-defense, as Master Merrill alluded to during his interview. I think making sure that we kind of understand and appreciate what all of those aspects bring to the art and how it strengthens us. And certainly I think this is really just general advice for anybody at whatever level of decision making they're making, that you just have to, while we all gravitate towards one or two things, I think it's definitely important to make sure that we're giving all of those fields equal and important treatment for just the development of the art, but also to just to continue to attract students and keep them engaged and involved. Just if your students' buckets don't match up with yours, they're just not going to stay on for very long. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I basically have kind of my one more open-ended question.
Oh, also get rid of all the one steps. There's
Master Homecheck might have a discussion with you about that.
I'm gonna put my phone on do not disturb.
At any rate, basically I have one more open-ended question for Master Marker. So we've consistently had anywhere from 10 to 20 people varying out there. So again, I know you're out there. I know I try to ask a thorough group of questions, but if there's any last minute stuff, now's your time, because I'm going to go into my ending comments here with Master Marker today. And that's kind of asking you basically if you have anything else you want to talk about. I leave it completely open-ended. Advice to students, studio owners, just memories, closing comments, words of wisdom, whatever.
I think one of the questions that that senior masters would ask of me that I always thought was a really interesting and guiding question was, what are you working on? And it became very obvious to me very fast that I needed to have an answer for that question. And if I didn't have an answer for that question, it meant that I was not in control of my training. Like, just, if you're just going along for the ride for whatever your instructor is teaching you that day, I mean, at certain ranks, yeah, you should be do what your instructor says. But as you continue to grow and mature and develop as a martial artist, you need to you need to have that self-motivation. You need to have that dedication to dig into the things that are really interesting to you, because at a certain point, you know, and we've all kind of talked about this, that like the curriculum is very detailed, spelled out up to Chodan, and then they're like, all right, Nahachi Samdan Bangyang Sambu, see you in 2 years. And you're like, what? And if you have not had the lessons instilled in you to take on to do self-learning and to dedicate yourself to your forms, or your whatever aspect of training appeals to you. Like for me, it became staff. And you know, through studying staff, I learned a heck of a lot more about stuff outside of staff than I did with staff. My master's thesis was originally going to be kind of the way we do staff is stupid and we need to be doing this and this. And as it grew, you know, I really learned a lot more about just the art in general and the people, and it really it teaches you lessons far beyond, you know, I know that you and Master Homestead are both fond of saying kick, punch, easy stuff, right? And that is really so true. And for the longest time, you're like, yeah, but the kick and punch are really important, and we gotta make sure. And then eventually, you're like, okay, now I'm starting to get it now. Yeah, that is the easy stuff. And I would just definitely say that that's the greatest gift that I think you can get from your instruction, from your teachers, is learning how to develop the art on your own and make it yours, make it unique to your passion, your body type, you know, but obviously being able to keeping and maintaining that association standard that you can start as a template for other people and show them how to grow beyond that. I think that's one of the real keys to advancement, and advancement far beyond like whatever you're wearing around your waist at the time, but just in terms of your understanding of the martial arts and the world around you and the relationships that you have around you. So I think I would leave it at that.
Excellent. All right. So I want to thank again Master Marker for being with us here for this interview. Had a great time reconnecting and speaking with Master Marker. Encourage you guys to go back and, like I said, encourage Master Marker to check the comments, and anybody who sees it late, I'm sure if you want to reach out to Master Marker for anything, he's there as well.
I'm here. Hit me up. Master Jorgensen, it's good to see you and talk to you again. You know, you and Mrs. Master Mrs. Jorgensen, or Mrs. Master Jorgensen. I'm not sure what she goes by. You know, you guys mean a lot to us, and it's really nice to talk to you and see you again. And I know I got to see her very briefly at the beginning before we went live. So hi, and yes. Tang Soo, everybody.
Yeah, same back to you and to Ms. Burke. Just a quick reminder to everybody who is interested in these interviews, I'll be here with Master Linda Russo on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So everybody have a great weekend, and Tang Soo.
Make sure you ask her what her favorite Subway sandwich is.
I will do that. And just as FYI, Master Ricky Jorgensen will tell everybody she is Master Jorgensen and I am other Master Jorgensen. That's what our students know me as. Anyway, everybody have a great weekend. Tang Soo. We'll see you at the next one.